What I'm saying is, I would not review the X9 if it was the last damn game system on Earth. It's the last game system on Earth, isn't it?
RetroRob plays everything.
Hello, ladies and germs. This game system is by popular demand. It is the X9 handheld game system, or handheld game system, if you will. Kind of worried about that. Anyway, this one arrived from China. I believe it was strapped to the wheel of the jetliner that flew it in here. As you can see, it really took a beating, and they basically just put it in an air packet. So the box is pretty much crushed when it got here. Anyway, looking at the front, looks a lot like a Vita, doesn't it? Except you can see that there's only one analog stick, which is probably not analog at all.
You don't know that.
X9 World of Entertainment. I got mine in blue so it would match my Vita. Super excited about that. 5.1 inch high definition digital display screen. It can do game, music, film, audio, recording. Great. The X9 World of Entertainment. Support multi-language, 20 types. Support GBA SMC game. Built-in lithium ion battery. TV out capability and built-in speaker, that's good. Supports SD. Maximum 32 gigs. We'll definitely be testing that a little bit. 1.3 mega or 1.3 M pixel camera. Okay. Plays MP3, plays MP4, photo browser, ebook, and earphone jacks and hold switch. So very excited. Let's just pop it open and see what's inside, and then we can get to some playing. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, 2 compartments. It's kind of leaned over in here. You can see. Take that out. We have a manual. We have, oh yeah, I haven't seen these in a while. Yeah, some really nasty headbuds. We're not even gonna try those. And it looks like USB mini connector. There is a manual. It has a bit about device features. High clarity TFT screen. It's pretty much everything that was on the box. Keep this machine away from the cold, dusty, or moist environment. Well, that's good. Do not leave it exposed to direct sunlight, for example, in a parked car, in the open field, or on the bench. Or on the beach, sorry, not the bench. The beach. Shut down. It looks like it's not terrible English. I'll be darned. Well, we could talk another 2-3 hours about this manual.
Please don't.
Or we could look at the device. Here we go. Ooh, it's in a beautiful dark blue. Split D-pad. Not actually that offensive. Analog. You know, it's up high. Oops, sorry, here. Let's look at this a little bit closer. It's up high enough that I'm pretty sure it actually works, unlike some of them. A, B, X, Y is in bizarre locations. Usually it's A, B, X, Y. Volume up, volume down. Feels pretty nasty. Select and start. Those feel a little bit better, probably because they're smaller. General plastics. Moderately cheap. Not horrifically cheap, but moderately cheap. Looking at the back, this has a lot less detail than some of them. You can see the circle's a little bit scratched up on the back already. It's made to look a little bit like a PSP, or a lot like a PSP, or a cross between this and a Vita. Speaking of, hold on, let's go grab a Vita real quick. There's the Vita, and there is the X9.
I totally cannot tell the difference.
As you can see, they're very close in size, shape, and appearance. Yeah, this one looks a lot nastier, but still, not bad. All right, looking at the top, we have your right and left shoulder buttons. You've got your on-off switch right here. You've got SD card port right there. Mini USB. And finally, the AV out. What appears to be either for a microphone or a reset button hole right there. That's pretty much it. I'll turn on the screen in a minute, show you what it looks like, and then we'll get playing. And here's a look at the screen. As you can see, it's really nice and bright, and it looks really, really good, which has become kind of commonplace in these. As far as the volume goes, it goes up really, really high. It breaks up quite a bit at really high volumes, but in the middle settings, it's really not that bad. It's lacking in bass almost completely, but the mid-range that it has, it's pretty good. You know, it's not great. It's definitely not one of the best, but definitely not one of the worst either as far as sound goes. That said, the screen is really quite nice. I love this game. Come on. Go, go, go!
Gone.
And here we are on the main screen of the X9. Sorry if I go a little bit fast, but the plug is kind of half in and half out of the device, because if I plug it all the way in, the video quits working. Kind of a bummer there, huh? Anyway, here is the video function. I'm going to show you it again in a minute. I know I showed it to you earlier on the screen. The screen is really quite nice, isn't it? Next we have music. All the functions pretty much work the exact same way, which is generally okay, but the interface is kind of, you know, like mediocre. But you can browse to MP3s and play them. I'm not going to play them here because I don't want to get in trouble with the authorities or YouTube. It does have a photo view function that's pretty darn nifty. I don't know why you'd want to do this because the built-in camera is horrendous, but you can view photos on it that you took somewhere else. That was definitely not taken with this camera. I'll show you that in a minute. Alright, so let's back out of that. Not a bad function, but I don't know how much you need it. It does have an ebook reader. I think you've seen those about 1,000,000 times, so I'm going to skip over it. You know, if you guys want me to make sure to go through every feature from now on, let me know. I've had a couple complaints that these are really super long-winded, so I'm going to try and avoid some of the things that you don't really need to go into. Next, we have a recorder function. It's okay. It's not good, though. The stopwatch is kind of interesting because you can have multiple going at once. So, like, I could hit the timer, then I hit this top shoulder button, and boom, I got another timer open. That's kind of a useful function. I don't know why you'd use it with this, but hey, if you're carrying it in your pocket and you really need a timer, you've got one that's pretty darn nifty. Alright, so here is the settings menu. I'm going to kind of whisk through this, but you can go to display and set the backlight brightness for this if it's a little bit too dark for you. Note that that will affect battery life, but I thought you should really know about that. Power saving functions, it's how fast the system turns itself off automatically. Actually, it just turns off the screen automatically. Language, TV out, which I'm using right now. You do need to set this for it to do TV out. There's a media playlist synchronization tool.
Silly human can't say synchronization.
I have not used it. Sorry, I can't speak to how decent it is. And then you can adjust the screen offset. I don't think you're ever going to need to do that, to be honest. It does have font selection. You know what I didn't see in here, though? Maybe it is in here. No. There is not an actual, like, background setting in this particular menu. That's really kind of sad. I'm just used to that feature, so I can change the background color if I want. Alright, so there is a DV function. It's disabled because I'm plugged in right now, as is the camera. However, what I really want to show you right now, I want to show you the video that I recorded. You're going to be amazed. Alright, so here's from the camera. And we're going to start getting into my pet peeves here. No, this wasn't shot in 2000 or 2001. This was shot by this device just an hour ago. No, my dog is not in heaven. I'm not kidding you. This is like normal brightness. It's terrible. And I don't want to be like those reviewers that cut down everything, on these little handheld systems. But that is horrendous. That is embarrassing. You would never, ever use this camera for anything. And it's not dirty. I cleaned it because I was wondering, could it possibly actually record like that? And I have not seen anything like that since the early 2000s on really, really super cheap cameras that you could never really use. But anyway, yeah, kind of worrisome, right? Really bad. Now look, I know you don't buy these things to record videos. You buy them to play games. And fortunately, it fares quite a bit better at playing games than it does at recording video. It's not a perfect device, but it's not terrible at it. Let's start with Metal Slug here and show you a little bit about the feature set. I can save games and load them from here, so at any point during the game, you can pause and load or save progress. That's actually a pretty good thing there. Also in the settings, if you are unhappy with screen stretching, you can turn it off right here. Nice, right? Alright, so let's hit restart, which is how you start a game. And I've seen that before too in other systems, so it's not terrible. Let's get started with some Metal Slug. This, of course, is the Game Boy Advance version of Metal Slug. And start game from the beginning. I said start game from beginning. There we go. Will be Walter. And I do like the fact that you can do video output on these, although this one's kind of messed up. I like playing Game Boy Advance games on the big screen without having to pull out a entire console to do it. So that's kind of nice. And if it runs it well enough, or the game that you want to play well enough, well then, not bad. And it does an okay job. The D-pad is a little bit too spread out. It's not, the spacing between the different parts of the D-pad is just a little bit further than you want it to be to feel comfortable. And I got pretty big hands. Another thing about this is the quote analog stick, which it's not really analog, but this quote analog stick thing, actually it might be analog for all I know. It has a problem too where if you press too hard on it, it will kind of get stuck inside the plastics, inside the unit, and it will quit moving. It'll actually stick. So that is kind of a big problem with that controller. Again, the D-pad, it's not great, but I expect a little bit better in the $50 range. I mean, I don't expect much, but just a little bit better in the $50 range than what this thing's providing. But it's not terrible. That said, the device does feel horribly plasticky in your hands. I mean, really super plasticky. But the game's playing fine. I mean, as you can see, I'm not really struggling with the controls or anything. It's not horrendous or anything. It's just when I go to change direction abruptly, I have to go a long way to change direction. And if I use the analog stick, eventually it's going to stick. He just did it. Eventually it's going to stick on me. So I kind of have this thing where I switch back and forth between the analog stick and the D-pad. That's not great. The buttons work just fine. They're not the greatest feeling ones. They stick up kind of high and they're kind of bouncy. But they're not horrible. All right, let's go on and play another game. We're just going to do a couple that are built into the console itself. Then I'm going to show you how to load some external games. Okay, here we are with Three Wonders, which is an arcade game, and it's really nice that this runs them. You use the top shoulder button to add coins, and then start to start the game. It's kind of a weird configuration. You can change that configuration in the menu, but the default configuration is indeed very weird. And here we go. And you find that it runs pretty well. And it's definitely not horrible. This is one of those where the problems with the D-pad really show themselves, because I have a very hard time doing very decent movements with it. You see how I'm really just fighting it? I switched over to the analog stick, but as you saw, it just kind of got stuck in the corner there. And the reason it did is because it got stuck on the plastics inside it. Yeah, that's a problem. And it's a pretty bad one. I have a tail option. Ooh. Yeah, great game. Unfortunately, being kind of crippled by this controller. There we go. We'll just D-pad it, and maybe I'll get a bigger thumb. I suppose if you're stuck with this thing, you could probably 3D print yourself something to go over this to turn it into a standard cross, and it would be a lot better. Though it would have been nice if they just kind of did this out of the factory. Alright, here we are back at the main screen. You can see the shortcuts that I showed you earlier here that are to individual games. There's only a couple pages of this. There's also these 3 emulators right here. That said, they're all exactly the same thing. They actually just point to different directories. So, if I go in here and go to the dir list, even though this is the Game Boy emulator, notice I'm going to see some NES things. Another thing before I start a game real quick. See that number down at the bottom? Means nothing. It's just randomly going through the same games over and over again. There's probably about 100, maybe 50, I don't know. But it is just going through the same games over and over and over again. Just something to note. Alright, where was I? I was going to go show you Contra. And let's restart to start the game. And notice I was in the Game Boy Advanced emulator. Alright, so now I've got it stretched, which some people absolutely hate. Don't worry. I'm going to show you something here in a minute. Not my horrible playing. That said, the controller works okay on this game. The only problem is when you need to reverse direction real fast. Because of the long throw of the D-pad, you start having problems. And again, using that analog stick is pretty much out of the question for any long-term gaming session, because it will eventually screw up on you. Alright, let's pause a second. Let's go back into settings. Let's go to screen size. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch it over to scale. And I'm going to go back. And back. And return to the game. Now you see how there's no top or bottom bars anymore? Oops. I'm gonna get this guy. There we go. Except I died. Come on. But anyway, you can see there's no top or bottom bars. And it looks pretty good. The scaling looks pretty good here. I want that. I want that. But I can't get to it. Bummer. Oh, I am playing bad. Alright, enough of this. Let's go back and show you one more setting. Go to settings, go to screen size, and now I can switch to original size and hit back and return to the game. And you'll notice that now I have bars on the bottom, and this is the original size of the game. Not scaled at all. But it looks pretty good here too, I think. Not too bad. Oh, I am playing so bad. So bad. I wish I could I wish I could just blame the controller. I really wish I could just blame the controller. But it's me. Alright, let's show you running games off of the SD card. Alright, so let's run some external games, shall we? Alright, we're going to go to the browser. No, it's not an internet browser. Come on, there's no Wi-Fi on here. We're going to go to the card directory, and now I'm on my external card. We've already run Game Boy Advance games, so I'm not going to bother with that. Let's go with good old Tetris and see if it will open it. Sometimes you gotta press. Alright, invalid file format. So it cannot run old school Game Boy games. How about Game Boy Color? Can it do Game Boy Color? Yes, it can do Game Boy Color. So that is a good thing, huh? Let's see how it runs. Very often, I don't know why, but the Game Boy Color games just don't run that great on these. And don't forget, you can go back and do your stretch options and whatnot. So if I wanted to make sure this was full screen, I could hit back here and I could go to setting, and then I could go to screen size, and I could do just scale. I don't particularly like full screen, but I don't like the postage stamp either. Way to go. Skipped it out, by the way. It does remember these settings. So now that I hit restart here, see, it remembers that I stretched it. Yay. That's a goodie. That's a good thing. And here we are, 1942. Not going to play real long. Just kind of get a feel for how it's doing. Looks so weird on the big screen, huh? Controls are working okay here. And it feels pretty good. Pow. Yeah. Not bad. Of course, remember that with every emulator on these things, personal mileage may vary. You never know what games are going to run and what games are not going to run on these. They can be really fidgety. That said, that's not too bad. All right, let's go back to the main menu here. Up one. Let's try Genesis games. What do you think? You think they'll run? We're going to do, yeah, we'll do Aero Blasters. Hit restart. And it runs Genesis games. I don't think there's any included in the system itself either. Doon, 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 doon. And again, I'll say it with every one of these. Some games are going to work okay, and some are not going to run that great. So you might want to have somebody check for you if you're looking for a very specific game to run, whether it runs okay or not. Now, this is a little bit jumpy. I can feel it skipping a little bit. It does not feel 100%. Which is kind of funny, because I'll show you the SNES emulator, which seemed to fare a little bit better, as I recall on this. But there we go. It does run Genesis. Not perfectly, but it'll do okay in a pinch. All right, back. By the way, one of the most annoying things about this thing is the interface. It's you can hit the B button, no, the A button, because it's laid out like Nintendo. Actually, no, it's laid out the reverse of Nintendo. Sorry. You hit the A button sometimes to go back. Sometimes you hit the start button to go back, or I'm sorry, the select button to go back. It's kind of a mess of buttons. Neo Geo, Metal Slug. Here we go. Now, we know it runs Neo Geo stuff because there's some Neo Geo stuff in here. So if it doesn't recognize it, it's because of the file format. And I didn't test this one beforehand. So I don't know if it actually has a problem with Metal Slug or if it's just the version of it that I have. It doesn't have Metal Slug built in, but it does have some other Neo Geo games that it seems to run perfectly fine. And here is the NES. And I already showed you a NES game. But as you can see, I can load stuff perfectly fine from the external SD. We'll just hit this. I'm not going to bother playing, but just to show you that it does do it fine. Let's go back, and back, and back. Okay, so here we go with the Super Nintendo. We're going to start with some Twin B here. And we're going to end with some Twin B because I'm not going to do any other games on the SNES for it. Will it load? I'm building the anticipation. Yeah, I knew it would load. I've already done some SNES stuff on here. And there we go. Player 1. And I'm kind of surprised that this stuff seems to work pretty well on here versus the Genesis. Usually it's the other way around. Usually the Genesis stuff seems to work really well. And, Rob. And the SNES messes up. But the SNES stuff is pretty smooth. I'm going to tell you it's at a better frame rate than the Genesis stuff is. And I've run a couple games on here and had the same thing. Again, you can't judge any individual game by this. You never know what's going to run on it. And what is it? But as you can see, not bad. One thing that's kind of annoying on this is that the shoulder buttons feel awful. They're super clicky. And they don't feel right.
Star Fox did not run. Frown.
Alright, finally, does it run TurboGrafx 16? And the answer is... Well, I won't make you wait. Absolutely not. It does not run TurboGrafx 16, I'm sorry to say. Alright, so now that we've poked around at the game system a bit, let's get a verdict on it.
RetroRob plays everything.
Alright, so here we are at the verdict, and this is the kind of verdict I really hate to give because this game system does some things very well. It could have been a contender. I want to like it. It has a really great screen. The sound isn't too bad, even though it's not great, but it is very loud. The D-pad it's passable. It's not the worst D-pad I've ever dealt with, but it's not the greatest. It is somewhat responsive. The buttons, for the most part, are responsive as well. But the analog stick it's horrendous. I wouldn't use this thing for any of the other features other than movie playback. You can actually watch a movie on this reasonably and you wouldn't be too ticked off. But that camera is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Again, you have to be very careful when plugging in, or at least I do on mine, have to be very careful when plugging in the AV cable because if I plug it in too far, the AV will quit working. It's got a decent selection of games, but good luck finding it because half the games, this is one thing I didn't show you in here, half the games are in Japanese writing. So when you go to browse, you see a bunch of Japanese games. Now, you didn't see it in the one menu I went into, but the other menus are almost all in Japanese, so I can't really tell what I'm loading. So you basically end up going to your SD card all the time for games, which is, that's fine. But the browser system isn't the easiest to use, and it definitely doesn't have the friendliest user interface. So all in all, I don't want to give it a thumbs down because I could see at $50 if the other screens on some of the other ones are too small for you to see. If you have not the greatest vision and you're looking for a cheap way to play retro games, I guess it's okay if you can deal with the controller, but almost everything else in its implementation it's pretty bad. So I'm gonna give it a thumb sideways. There's conditions where you'll want to play it, but it's really not my thing, and I'll tell you that after this review I will put it in its box and go hide it somewhere. Alright, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for more. And I will see you in a couple days. Bye!